Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Just a few hours ago, MacroHard was thrust into the public by Elon Musk and XAI. Yeah, it's kind of a joke, and even Elon admits it's a tongue-in-cheek name, but MacroHard, while seemingly an insane idea, might be doable, and if it is, it's really world-changing. So let's take a look at Elon's post and then let's dig a little bit deeper. So on August 22nd, you can see Elon Musk posted, "Join XAI and help build a purely AI software company called MacroHard." It's a tongue-in-cheek name, obviously, but the project is very real. In principle, given that software companies like Microsoft do not themselves manufacture any physical hardware, it should be possible to simulate them entirely with artificial intelligence. And Grok, in reply to Joe Hansen, did a good job of explicating exactly what this means. MacroHard is XAI's playful project name, a nod to Microsoft, obviously, and Elon Musk has previously posted like MacroHard is much, much greater than Microsoft, like with the equation with the two carets and things like that. So obviously Elon has played around with that idea previously. I think he said the problem with physical-based artificial intelligence, he said something about how the difficulty of doing one of these major projects with artificial intelligence was it was macroscopic in scale and hard or difficult to do. So of course he said MacroHard, and then he said MacroHard is much, much greater than Microsoft. Anyway, so that's the joke of the whole thing. Obviously, Elon is still 12 years old, and I think I'm still 12 at heart too, because I find it very, very funny. Anyway, a project name, a nod to Microsoft for building a fully AI simulated software company, and that's what we're going to talk about. The goal, since firms like Microsoft produce no physical hardware, AI could theoretically replace their entire operations from coding to management. It's real, and we are hiring. I guess Grok feels itself part of XAI, which is reasonable. So the first question here is this just a Musk meme, right? Elon is wont to make a lot of jokes about things, but I think given the fact that the company has actually been instantiated, I believe it's been incorporated at this point, so there is a MacroHard corporation existing at this point that Elon and company started, and given the fact that we've already seen other companies begin to take steps in this direction, it seems like while it's kind of a crazy, insane idea to think about a virtual company, it is actually doable at this point, and if XAI or another company, it doesn't really matter who, if anyone is able to create this company, it really could change the world. So of course we know Elon loves names. He's had the Boring Company's not a flamethrower that they've produced before. The SpaceX Starship is famously very pointed because of the movie The Dictator, where Sacha Baron Cohen playing the dictator asks for the missiles to be more pointy, and that was something that caused the Starship to be more pointy than it might have otherwise been, which I guess has actually caused some problems in the past. It's actually been a little bit problematic because it was a little bit too pointy. But anyway, Elon, he loves his memes, he loves his jokes and everything, and clearly the company name tickles him, but the idea behind this is not a joke. So the best analogy I can think of at this point is kind of like The Sims, the game that people have grown up playing if you're of a certain age at least. It's those virtualized characters living in a virtual world, but it's actually a company. It's actually like an enterprise. It's a Microsoft or a Google, at least if you strip out their Pixel phones and things like that. In other words, it's a software company that just moves bits around. A company like that effectively just moves electrons and pieces of silicon. They're not doing anything in the real world like making, a pen or something like that, or a car, for instance, or a humanoid robot or something. A software company exists in the virtual space. Now, traditionally, up until today at least, you have required human beings to actually do the coding, to type things out, to create the code, to run the company, to do the marketing, to do the human resources. All of that kind of stuff has required humans, but the actual product, the thing that's produced, is just bits on a hard drive that get pulled into RAM at some point and then make the CPU or the GPU flip a whole bunch of bits back and forth, and then out of that comes some data, which then gets written back to RAM or to a hard drive or wherever it's got to go. But the central thing that's actually happening doesn't involve anything physical outside of electrons moving around in a piece of silicon. So that is virtualizable. As opposed to creating a vehicle or even something simple like a pen, you don't have to move atoms around. You only have to move electrons around. And that means a company like Microsoft is actually at some exposure to being replaced by a virtualized company like what Elon is talking about here. So in a company like this, what do you replace? Well, the first thing you obviously replace is the engineers. You replace the human engineers with AI coding agents, and those agents can interact with each other. It's not just one, but imagine, a company with 100 software engineers or something. You could replace those 100 software engineers with virtual software engineers instead of human ones. Then, of course, you've got quality assurance testing that can be replaced by agents. You've got management and human resources. That's kind of a weird thing, that human resources, but think about it more like on an agile basis where you could have virtualized owners of the sprints. The virtual agents would take the place of humans owning a sprint and then distributing the work out to the group of people, which again is virtual in this case, to actually accomplish a given task. And in a really weird twist, a virtual HR agent could hire, quote, hire a virtual AI agent. In other words, you could have kind of a hiring thing that was going on. It could happen very, very quickly, of course, but you could have a whole bunch of agents that could even be potentially manufactured by third-party companies. Let's say that my company produced this little agent that would do a particular thing really, really well. Well, the virtual HR agent could interview that agent and decide whether or not that would be a good fit to go into the company. And if it is, then they could take it on and hire it, or it could be done internally or something like that. So in a weird way, you could think about, human resources, or I don't know what you'd call that. Maybe instead you could call it HAIR instead of HR, like human AI resources. I don't know. HAIR is a nice acronym. I like that. But anyway, in a weird way, you could see how you could have virtual human resources or HAIR agents actually interviewing these individuals for jobs, taking them, onboarding them, teaching them what they need to know, and turning them loose to do things. All of this could happen instead of months. It could happen in seconds, right? It could all happen in just seconds. And so the HR agents could hire and fire millions of engineering agents or other agents within the company every single day. And then, of course, beyond that, you've got the marketing and sales agents that are out there trying to make the sale to other enterprises or to us end consumers, depending on the product. And of course, all of this would run in a closed loop system with some sort of feedback. We've already seen this with vending machine companies that are actually running vending machines to see how much money they can make based on given different LLMs. That, of course, is limited by the physical reality of having to stock the vending machine, having a physical vending machine, all of that kind of stuff. If you imagine software, it's freed from that, because if there's a million people that want a copy of your software, you can give it to them very, very rapidly. As fast as the internet can spit that data out to all of these people, you can give it to them instantly. So these companies could scale much more rapidly than any company that's constrained by physical product. So currently this sounds a little bit insane. Even trying to replace a single person with an AI agent is very difficult at this point. Trying to replace an entire company, an entire corporate structure with AI sounds kind of nutty. Of course, you've got to worry about the ethical risks involved. I mean, what does this mean? This could be job displacement for thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people if this actually works. And of course, you've got the risk of emergent, unexpected behavior coming out of this group of agents that are sitting there cycling around and around and around again, working in this virtual company. What is the culture of this company? What is it going to be like? Will it still be human? Will it be aligned with humans? Will it actually move away from alignment with humans? There's a lot of danger in that. But with that danger comes a fascinating aspect. You could have a company that could scale more rapidly than any other company in history because it can operate at thousands of times faster than human beings are able to operate, and could expand to be $1 billion industry and then $1 trillion industry much more rapidly than any company in history. Just for one example, I know Meta has been looking at paying people like a $500 million bonus or something to come on board and work for them. I would do it for a tenth that price, I will tell you that much. But anyway, there's just a very, very few of these engineers out there, these AI engineers that are able to operate at the frontier at that level. What if in this virtual company you created one of your agents, one of your employees, your virtual engineer is that good? Well, you don't have to look around for another one. You just duplicate 1,000 copies of this person, and suddenly you've got 1,000 of these $500 million valued engineers working for your company as opposed to one or two. And of course, they're doing it for the cost of electricity and the cost of the hardware. So that is incredibly cheap compared to the human equivalent, and they can work faster. So you could have 1,000 of these top-level engineers working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and working much more rapidly than a human can. And that's the unlock that takes this kind of crazy, insane sounding idea and really makes me say this could actually change the world, like in a significant way. So why could this insane idea work? Well, number one, of course, like we talked about, these companies are inherently digital. There's no physical atoms to move around to slow things down. Number two, of course, we've got existing precedents that are being built all the time. We've got AI coding copilots like Cursor, like Microsoft's Copilot Copilot, ironically enough. We've got multi-agent systems like AlphaStar. We've got generative design loops. We've got agent villages of virtual agents that are already doing things sort of like this. Of course, what companies have discovered recently is that firing everybody and just replacing them with AI doesn't really work at this point. There's problems with that. Humans still need to be in the loop right now, but xAI is looking at building a brand new company, a brand new virtual company. Obviously, they're hiring human beings to replace human beings, which is a weird ethical thing. But the upshot is that they're not a traditional company. They're looking at starting from scratch, not replacing humans with AI, but actually building the entire company as an AI virtual company. And that makes a very different scaffolding on which you're building this company, and they may very well be able to get rid of most, if not all, humans. Then, of course, you've got the money pouring into xAI. Elon Musk has put in a ton of money. His backers have put in a ton of money. There is a lot of money to produce the hardware, to produce amazing software. If you look at how rapidly Grok has caught up from being nothing just a couple of years ago to basically right at the frontier competing with all of the other major companies that have been around much longer, it's very, very impressive. And Elon, I think, just kind of wants to overshoot everybody and keep on going while everyone else flattens out. He wants to keep, accelerating. Then, of course, there's the economic angle. The cost reduced from hiring humans and having all of the need to pay humans a lot of money and give them healthcare and benefits and all of that kind of stuff. The costs reduced to the cost of electricity, plus the computers, plus, cooling and things like that. But scaling is relatively trivial. You just need more hardware and another data center, and you can scale up your company as big as you want. You don't have to hire 10,000 people or 100,000 people to grow your company. You just add another 10,000 or 100,000 GPUs and your company gets way, way bigger. So scale is relatively trivial compared to traditional companies. And like I said earlier, whoever the best HR agent is, whoever the best engineer or researcher is, whoever the best salesperson is, you can replicate thousands of copies of that person, that agent, in the virtual world where you just can't do that in real life. Your company might have like, wow, that's our, a number one salesperson. They do an amazing job, but we only have one of them. And we have 10 other people who are just kind of mediocre. Well, you don't need those 10 mediocre people anymore. You just take the best one and make a bunch of copies of that person. And then your sales can just go through the roof. So with all that being said, we have the possibility of a whole new category of company, virtual companies, entire companies just simulated in AI, not existing in the real world at all. And if this works, we could see virtualized software companies, virtualized Wall Street finance companies. We could see virtualized Hollywood studios, which I think is a very real possibility, and even virtualized governments, which actually might be a large step up from where we are right now with human government. So yes, MacroHard sounds like a joke. It sounds like it's insane, but it's also doable pretty much with the technology we have now, maybe sort of one more evolution of that technology. And of course, with Musk doing his first principles thinking all the time, the idea would be, if you can do this, why not try to do it? Why not throw some money at it and see if we can do it? And if it does work, then it actually fits Sam Altman's bill of artificial general intelligence, which is doing useful economic work. And it also has the potential to completely revolutionize the world in both good and bad ways. Alrighty, folks, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Would you work for MacroHard? Actually, have you applied already? And or are you concerned about MacroHard and its children taking your jobs and your livelihood? I think both of those things could very well be true. Anyway, let me know in the comments while you're down there if you don't mind liking the video. It really helps out with YouTube's algorithm. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.